9 years on, is blockchain a legitimate disruptive technology? And I would argue that if that answer was definitively yes, if people could answer it, this room would be probably about 10 times the size that it is now. And I just think we have to just sort of recognize these facts. And as somebody who has been building businesses since 1993 in technology, I have to say it is the most complex technology that I've ever run across. And I don't think enough people talk about that. I mean, if you just look at just one piece of the equation, money. So the blockchain, to me, when it's most effective, it moves information and it moves money. And so the problem with moving money is that that's the single most regulated human activity in history. And so a lot of the enterprise has been, and a lot of the other companies have been removing money as part of the overall solution, particularly in the enterprise. And that also has to do with the fact that money like Ethereum is also very volatile. So clearly I believe that there's actually value, and I think the place that value will probably be recognized first is around the blockchain, and I think those applications will start coming in 2019. So here's kind of the way I see the market currently. So there are a lot of what I would call theoretical businesses, and these have been, the $2 billion or $3 billion of money that's gone into ICOs. The typical ICO pitch is that we replace a company or we replace an industry. It's kind of a zero-sum game. They change the way you do advertising. They change the way you watch videos. They change things that you're already doing, and they use the blockchain to sort of profoundly transform the way companies and industry works in somewhat of a zero-sum game. On the enterprise side, they quite frankly have been struggling, but there's been a lot less innovation that's been going on there. But their goals are totally different. They have business processes, and they're trying to make those business processes more effective. And so you've got literally you've got two different worlds that are happening simultaneously. You've got the ICOs on the one side, and then on the other side, you've got the enterprises trying to figure out, how best to improve the business they have. It's, I can actually go through my career and kind of point out something that was very similar to this, which was I started out building CNET, which was a competitor to computer magazines. There were 3 companies that had $2.5 billion of revenue. And the goal of CNET was to put them all out of business. And by the time I left CNET, we were a NASDAQ 100 company. And the largest computer magazine publisher had gone out of business, and the others were a mere fraction of themselves. So I left CNET in February of 2000. Salesforce had launched in January of 2000. And the mission at Salesforce was totally different. The idea there was to take businesses that were struggling at the time to use the internet and to find good use for it, and to give them tools, in this case CRM and other cloud-based applications, so that they could actually be more effective in running their business. So it went from, in my career, this sort of zero-sum game of trying to put the magazines out of business, to a switch over to trying to help corporations use the internet and to make them more effective in the way they operated. And so if you look at the size of the cloud industry, these are basically services like Salesforce that have been created, applications that have been created that effectively make businesses operate better today. So we've actually done. So we've actually, and by the way, if I just go back, these are 99% centralized services, and maybe 1% decentralized, maybe even less. So we're actually creating a decentralized competitor to a centralized business. So Amazon Web Services, highly centralized. They have data centers, and inside those data centers they have servers, and they've actually built an enormously successful business, and they were actually much more competitive with the original decentralized servers that sat inside of companies, and have obviously grown to be enormously useful, successful, and in the case of Amazon, profitable businesses. So in our case, we've launched a decentralized competitor to Amazon's video cloud business, and I'll explain how it works. This is really just a very complicated way of showing that what we do is we allow servers that exist all across the internet to do the exact same thing that the servers within Amazon's web services do. In other words, what we're really doing is just taking a data center that Amazon has, and we're exploding it and allowing any server running anywhere around the world to basically be able to do the exact same thing that happens within Amazon Web Services. The best way really to describe this is it's really doing the same thing for hardware that Uber did for driving, or Airbnb did for house sharing. The only difference being that Uber and Airbnb involve having people in your house and in your car, and it's a little less creepy turning over your data center. So the reason that this is actually important is there are in data centers today about 30% of servers today are what are classified as zombies. They're actually not used for anything. It's sort of pure overbuilding, and that represents about $30 billion in capital that's been spent that generates no revenue. And these servers are, of course, all around the globe. They're not centralized. So by using this model that's been proven for Airbnb and Uber, but applied to hardware, we do a couple of important things. One is we dramatically lower the cost. And you have to understand who the customers are. The people who are doing, first of all, video is 80% of the internet. It's growing at 25% compound annual. You've got things like VR coming along, 4K, 8K. So video itself is on its own sort of asymptotic trajectory. And so the companies that are using Amazon are, by and large, media companies who are also directly competitive with Amazon because Amazon has their own video services. So by using these underutilized servers, we dramatically reduce the cost. And when I say disintermediate oligarchs, it's really just allowing companies to not have to spend money with the services, particularly in Amazon's case, where they are using that money to directly come back and compete with them. The last part is I used to tell people early on in the life of Salesforce that ultimately people would choose it in the early part because it was cheaper, but over the long term it would actually be more innovative. And I think by creating a decentralized network that's open source, it allows for a lot more creativity, a lot more apps to be built natively to run on top of it. So we have begun the process now of building VideoCoin. It's as I said, these applications are incredibly complex. It will take us probably on the order of a year before we have the first prototypes that we're running. We've begun. Very soon we'll turn over our test net. We've been hiring as fast as we possibly can, and our goal is obviously to build the broadest community we can, particularly around developers who can add value to the network. So, pardon me. So, the belief that I have is that these services are really complicated, and building an application like competing with Amazon Web Services is not as simple. It's not as simple as building a website. So all of these applications, first of all, you have to figure out what the technology is, but then you actually have to go through long development projects to actually make these things work. There's no shortcut to getting something out of the blockchain. But my belief is that applications like these, and what we're doing is basically just taking the whole concept of having servers, and we're providing the same economics that you get through Uber and Airbnb, and as a result, we can dramatically lower the cost and increase the innovation in what is a very large domain of internet cloud spending. So anyway, thank you very much for coming out. I really appreciate it.